Let me tell you something that, well, really defies everything you think you know about medieval construction. Across Europe, in cathedrals that echo with centuries of prayers and fortresses that saw the march of armies, there exist wooden boards that have actually outlasted entire civilizations. Floors that carried footsteps for 7 centuries, doors that stayed square long after their iron hinges crumbled, and walkways that endured storms, sieges, and decades of damp, yet never warped, buckled, or rotted. Step into the lower chambers of Nidaros Cathedral in Norway, and you will find oak boards still solid after 750 years. Travel south to France's Castelnaude Fortress, and you will see defensive walkways built to endure wind and sun for centuries. Modern analysis reveals deep veins of tannin woven into these boards' fibres, almost as if they were engineered to resist time. Yet here is the paradox. These simple planks outlasted stone, plaster and iron. How could timber, a material so fragile in its natural state, endure where supposedly stronger materials failed? The truth is that medieval craftsmen were quietly mastering what we would now call engineered wood. They strengthened timber systematically in ways that were, well, deliberately kept secret. And today, for the first time, we can begin to understand their methods. Before we dive into their secrets, we must recognize the vulnerability of raw timber. Freshly cut or green wood contained anywhere from 40 to 200% moisture, depending on the season and species. Inside each plank, microscopic water pockets caused instability. As moisture escaped unevenly, the wood twisted, split, or cupped. Placed in medieval Europe's harsh conditions, bone-cold winters, leaky roofs, damp walls, untreated timber rarely lasted more than 50 to 80 years. Fungi and insects thrived, and any board left to its own devices would almost certainly fail. For many years, medieval carpenters, watched patterns emerge through sheer experience. They noticed, that timber stored near kitchen smoke almost never developed mould. Logs that spent time floating in tannin-rich streams became, noticeably heavier, darker, and even resistant to insects. Boards stacked near leather workshops would, over time, absorb vapours that seemed to harden their very fibres. This wasn't some kind of magic. It was, in fact, careful empirical observation. Their crafting knowledge, honestly, was forged through hands-on experience. Eventually, they started connecting the dots. If smoke could preserve meat and leather, why not timber too? And if tannins could turn raw hides into armour-like leather, why not use the same idea for wood? Over the years, tanners and carpenters, almost by accident, formed a revolutionary partnership. Together, they created what was, in essence, Europe's very first engineered wood. Right at the centre of this transformation was tannin. You'd find it in oak bark, chestnut, walnut, and even in the fallen leaves scattered on the forest floor. Tannins, you see, bind with lignin, the natural glue inside wood, stiffening its fibres and pushing out moisture. The result was really twofold: greater structural stability and a strong resistance to fungi or insect attack. Modern laboratory tests on medieval boards show, believe it or not, a 12 to 40% increase in bending resistance, shrinkage reduced by 20 to 30%, and fungal penetration slowed by as much as 70%. These boards weren't just lucky. They had been chemically fortified, centuries before anyone had even imagined the science of polymer chemistry. Once the power of tannin was understood, craftsmen perfected immersion. Oak bark was boiled to create a dark, bitter solution. Boards were submerged for days or weeks, sometimes weighted down to ensure complete saturation. The liquid penetrated deep into the pores, colouring and transforming the fibres from within. The final transformation came in the smoke-curing rooms, primitive low-heat kilns where boards were dried slowly in aromatic smoke. The smoke contained phenols and aldehydes, antimicrobial compounds that created a hardened protective surface. Combined with the internal tannin reinforcement, the boards were stabilized both chemically and physically. Any slight warping was corrected while the wood remained pliable, straightened and clamped into its final form. This precision step, noted in only the most secretive guild records, ensured that the boards remained flat and true for centuries. The combination of tannin infusion, smoke curing and careful straightening produced a material centuries ahead of its time. Today, scientists compare these boards to modern engineered wood like laminated veneer lumber and cross-laminated timber. The difference is that medieval craftsmen achieved this without laboratories, machines or synthetic chemicals. They relied solely on observation, skill and patience. These boards were reserved for places where failure could not be tolerated. Grand halls, cathedral galleries, defensive walkways and ship decks. In these applications, the treated wood performed flawlessly for generations. Guilds guarded these techniques fiercely. Knowledge was currency, identity, and security. Written manuals omitted the treatment steps deliberately. Apprentices learned through observation and demonstration, never through texts. Modern science has, reconstructed much of this method. LCMS and FT spectroscopy reveal the chemical fingerprints of tannins and smoke on surviving boards, confirming centuries-old empirical wisdom. Today, survivalists, homesteaders and craftsmen can actually replicate these processes using simple tools. Tannin-rich bark, immersion, controlled smoke, and, of course, careful shaping. The result is timber that resists warping, rot and insects, all without chemicals, electricity or industrial machinery. The lesson of medieval woodcraft extends well beyond timber. These craftsmen understood a fundamental philosophy. Strength must be created before construction, not applied after failure. They invested time, patience and knowledge into materials so that the structures they built could endure centuries. In our fast-paced, disposable world, this is really a principle worth reviving. Durable construction is not an accident. It is a choice made before the first nail is driven. The next time you step across a medieval floor or touch a centuries-old door, remember what you're holding. Not just wood, but centuries of human insight, patience and skill. And perhaps the greatest strength lies not in the timber itself, but in the understanding of those who knew how to prepare it. If you enjoyed uncovering the lost wisdom of medieval craftsmen, make sure to like, share, comment and subscribe to The Hard Past. Every week we dig into history to find the techniques, secrets and philosophies that shaped the world. and that can still guide us today.